Hi, good evening. You're watching Awani Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. The Conference of Rulers will gather in October to consider the issue of non-Muslims' use of the word Allah in Malaysia. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim says this will take place after an advisory council to the rulers discusses the same issue in August. Anwar's statement comes after a meeting with the Sultan of Selangor, who is also the chair of the National Council for Islamic Religious Affairs. He said the government's stand was to recognize and apply the existing policy, which limits the use of the word Allah to Muslims in the peninsula, and to give conditional usage for non-Muslims in Sabah and Sarawak. Anwar added that Putrajaya would streamline the existing policy based on what is decided by the Conference of Rulers. He said the decision will be upheld as a final policy in relation to the issue. Indonesian President Joko Widodo, better known as Jokowi, has arrived for a 2-day working visit in Malaysia. This is at the invitation of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, who visited the Republic in January. Jokowi, his wife and a delegation arrived at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport at around 3:40 p.m. today. He is scheduled to meet Anwar at Sri Perdana in Putrajaya tomorrow, where the two leaders are expected to witness the exchange of several agreements between Malaysia and Indonesia. Jokowi will also be attending a banquet with the Yang di-Pertuan Agong at Istana Negara, and the Indonesian president last visited the country in 2019 after being elected for a second term. In tackling the rising cost of living and wage stagnation facing youth and country, Muar MP Syed Saddiq Syed Abdul Rahman suggests that Malaysia implement a wage benchmarking system. He says this is a more targeted alternative to a blanketed minimum wage system.
Kalau kamu merupakan graduan dalam bidang, let's say computer engineering, sektor itu akan tahu besar kemungkinan kamu ada hutang pendidikan RM50,000 ke RM100,000. Pada masa yang sama, ikut kos hari hidup tempat kamu, contohnya kamu bekerja di Kuala Lumpur, perlukan RM2,700. Dan di situ wage benchmarking akan dilakukan bagi sektor tempat yang kamu duduki. Dan diiklankan sejelas-jelas mungkin, bukan saja dikeluarkan oleh Jabatan Statistik, tetapi turut diikut in principle oleh syarikat-syarikat terbesar, dengan itu akan diikut oleh SME-SME juga. Wage benchmarking which is sector specific.
Malaysia agreed to raise its minimum wage to RM1,500 per month in May last year, while postponing the implementation of the order for SMEs to July 1st this year. The Malaysia My Second Home MM2H garnered almost RM1 billion of net income in the past year, despite stricter conditions set. Home Minister Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail says the financial value recorded for 1 year was nearly equivalent to the value recorded in 5 years.
Sebelum ini, Yang Berhormat, ada yang lolos dalam program ini, tapi rupanya dia terlibat dengan aktiviti pengintipan. Itu memang berlaku. Kerana itu, kita perketatkan syarat, bermaksud rasionalnya adalah, pertama, kita harap kita akan dapat peserta yang betul-betul berkualiti. Yang kedua, syarat-syarat kita itu menjadikan kita lebih kompetitif berbanding negara lain. Kerana niat sebenar program ini ialah kita nak tarik peserta dari luar negara untuk menghabiskan usia persaraan mereka, atau mereka masuk dengan kemahiran yang diperlukan oleh negara.
He said that compared to the 2015 to 2019 period, the government made just RM958 million. Applications are now subject to stricter requirements. For instance, each applicant has to contribute RM1 million in fixed deposit. According to him, a total of 375 MM2H program applications have been approved, while another 800 received pre-approvals, passing all the required screenings. As such, the overall collections this year, one period alone, has reached almost RM1 billion compared to the previous 5 years. Stern action will be taken to control open burning during the El Nino period, expected to begin this month. Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change Minister Nik Ahmad says authorities are continuously monitoring the situation to prevent unexpected incidents.
Situasi pembakaran terbuka di seluruh negara pada masa ini adalah dalam keadaan terkawal. Sepanjang tahun ini sehingga 25 Mei 2023, kita menerima 1,800 aduan kes pembakaran terbuka di peringkat Jabatan Alam Sekitar dengan 80% kes melibatkan pembakaran sampah sarap. Walau bagaimanapun, terdapat 5 kes pembakaran terbuka besar di Semenanjung yang telah menyebabkan jerebu setempat melibatkan 3 kes pembakaran tanah gambut dan 2 kes pembakaran di tapak pelupusan sampah.
Separately, Nik Nazmi said the government would review the Transboundary Haze Act before it is reintroduced in Parliament. He added that his ministry received reports from Malaysian companies in Indonesia about working together to prevent open burning. He also said discussions were held with Bursa Malaysia to obtain reports from the listed companies under the ministry's supervision to ensure transparency on their actions. The Tobacco and Smoking Control Bill, which includes the Generational Endgame GEG, is set to be tabled in Parliament next Monday after rounds of fine-tuning. Special Advisor to the Health Minister, Dr. Kelvin Yee, weighs in on some of the concerns related to the bill, as well as amendments made to address these concerns.
So basically, there were certain concerns on the enforcement powers that was afforded in the first bill itself. I can give you, for example, there were questions whether what if a person has possession of a tobacco product? For example, I have a cigarette and somebody wants to sabotage me and put a cigarette in my bag. Will I be then arrested? Some enforcement powers, including breaking into residential homes and also confiscating on the suspicion of having tobacco products. So some of these enforcement powers were properly fine-tuned, were properly discussed, and there was a middle point that we came up to where possession of tobacco products now by the GEG generation is no more a crime and it's not covered under the Act. Fact of the matter is a person that smokes in the GEG generation has to be caught smoking red-handed. Only they can be compounded, and it's a compounded offense, not a criminal offense. Even if the person does not settle the compound and brought to court, his records will not be in the criminal records. Fact of the matter is, instead, he will be given what we call as community service rather than criminal liability on this extent.
Kelvin stressed that the Tobacco Control Bill was not intended to be punitive, but rather educational. In addition, he said a new clause has been added to the bill to allow for a periodic review of the potential law's effectiveness.
Another point that we have agreed in the new version of the bill, which is for me a groundbreaking clause, which inserts a mandatory review of the Act itself and its implementation and its effectiveness. As I said, many people have said that the implementation will be an issue. So instead of stopping the bill from coming to life, but we are giving the benefit of the doubt and to allow the bill to come to life. But after 2 years, there will be a mandatory review by not just the Ministry of Health, but also the Parliamentary Select Committee, and the report will be tabled in Parliament. And this review, of course, would look at its implementation issues, its effectiveness, the readiness of the government to fully roll it out, and more importantly, science and data based on, for example, issues of vape, concepts of harm reduction, and then decisions will be made on all those reviews, and it will be fully transparent and tabled in Parliament, and that's where we can make changes if there is needed, whether to make it better, whether to amend, or if needed, remove the law in itself. And the review is for the first 2 years before implementation, 5 years, 10 years, and there's a periodic review.
Time for a quick break. We'll be right back.
Asking the tough questions is what we do every day here on Astro Awani. Catch me every weeknights at 10:30 p.m. across all Awani platforms.
Welcome back. Around 42,000 are at risk from flooding after the destruction of a dam in southern Ukraine, with flood levels expected to peak on Wednesday. The United Nations warned that the breach of the Nova Kakhovka Dam will have grave consequences for thousands of people in the coming days. UN Aid Chief Martin Griffiths said people on both sides of the Dnipro River will face losing homes, food, safe water and livelihoods. Meanwhile, Russia's state media reported at least 7 people missing. A state of emergency has also been declared in the annexed part of Ukraine's Kherson region. The Geneva Conventions ban targeting dams in war because of the danger to civilians. Ukraine and Russia blame each other for the dam collapse. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of detonating an environmental bomb of mass destruction. But Russia claims Ukraine carried out the attack from its alleged failure of its counter-offensive. Meanwhile, ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, was accused of allowing Chinese Communist Party CCP members to access data of activists and protesters in Hong Kong. The allegations were presented in a court filing submitted to the San Francisco Superior Court as part of a lawsuit filed by a former ByteDance executive.
According to Yin Tao Yu, users who uploaded protest-related content on TikTok were identified and monitored. Hong Kong saw huge protests in 2014 where people demanded the right to elect their own leader. But much of the dissent has diminished following Beijing's crackdown with the national security law after the 2019 anti-government protests. Yu added that CCP members were able to access US TikTok user data and were also physically present at ByteDance's offices in Beijing. A ByteDance spokesperson has denied the claims, describing them as baseless. They also said Yu was employed by the company for less than a year and in that time worked on a now discontinued app called Flippergram.
A record-breaking number of high school students across China walked into exam halls to sit for the notoriously tough college entry exams. China's Education Ministry said nearly 13 million students registered as candidates to take the Gaokao exam, which is critical to securing spots at China's top universities. The mass exams were a first since the country lifted zero COVID rules that forced classes online for months. The exams last up to 4 days depending on the province, taking between 60 and 150 minutes per subject. The maximum score is 750, with a score of over 600 required for a place at best universities. Most Chinese students get just one shot at the grueling tests. In 2021, 17% of students nationwide retook the exam. The spike in candidates, up 980,000 this year to 12.91 million, has prompted concerns from students already facing an uncertain economy and dwindling job opportunities. Now over in the U.S., 2 people were killed and 5 others injured in a shooting at a graduation ceremony in Virginia. The shooting outside a theater hall sent hundreds of people, many of them wearing graduation gowns, running for safety on Tuesday evening.
A 19-year-old suspect tried to flee but was arrested. Police said he will be charged with at least 2 counts of second-degree murder. The victims' identities have not been released, but police said the 2 people killed were an 18-year-old man who was part of the graduating class and his 36-year-old father. The suspect is believed to have known at least one of the victims. The gunman opened fire in Monroe Park, which is directly opposite the theatre, shortly after the ceremony for Huguenot High School had finished at around 5:15 p.m. Families and graduates were leaving the theatre when at least 8 shots rang out.
That wraps up Awani Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Soraya Mia, and we'll see you again.